In the shimmering haze of Dubai's artificial seasons, where summer heat is tamed by marble corridors and winter evenings carry the faint scent of oud and rosewater, power moves quietly. It travels in private elevators, behind tinted glass, and in the lowered voices of those who serve the palaces. This is the story of one woman who carried a secret through those corridors for 9 months. A secret that would surface not in whispers, but in the full glare of a royal wedding night. Her name was Layla Mansour. She was 26, born in a modest neighborhood of Alexandria, Egypt, where the Mediterranean breeze once carried the promise of something larger. Layla had trained as an archivist. Not the glamorous kind who appears in films, but the meticulous sort who restores fragile documents, catalogs forgotten ledgers, and preserves the paper trails of history. In 2023, she answered an advertisement placed by the Al-Sef Foundation, a private cultural heritage initiative funded by Sheikh Tariq bin Hamad Al-Sef, third son of a prominent Emirati family. The position: senior conservator for the family's private library, a collection spanning rare Qurans, Ottoman maps, and pearl-diving journals from the pre-oil era. Salary generous. Accommodation provided. Discretion required. She arrived in Dubai in early April 2024. The compound, not a palace in the tourist sense, but a sprawling modern estate on the outskirts of Al-Barari, felt more like a museum campus than a home. High walls, date palms imported from Al Ain, fountains that never slept. Layla's apartment was small but elegant. White walls, teak floors, a view of the gardens. She worked in silence among shelves that smelled of aged leather and sandalwood. Sheikh Tariq, 34, appeared rarely. When he did, it was to request a specific volume or ask a quiet question about provenance. He spoke softly, listened carefully. Over months, their conversations lengthened. He asked about Alexandria's libraries, about Coptic manuscripts she had once handled, about the sea. She answered with precision, never volunteering more than asked. By October, the tone had shifted. Invitations to private dinners, walks in the moonlit garden, gifts, a first-edition travelogue, a silver bracelet etched with verses from Al-Mutanabi. Layla understood the boundaries. She was staff. He was royalty. Yet boundaries blurred in the way they always do when two people spend long evenings discussing forgotten poets and the fragility of memory. In December, when the desert cooled and the city prepared for winter festivities, they crossed the line. It was not impulsive. It was deliberate, quiet, and, for both, inevitable. She discovered the pregnancy in February 2025. A missed cycle, a clinic visit under an assumed name in Jumeirah. 8 weeks. The doctor's face was neutral. Layla's was calm. She thanked him, paid in cash, and returned to the compound. That night she stood before the mirror in her apartment and placed both hands on her abdomen. She felt nothing yet, no movement, no certainty, but she knew the mathematics. The child would arrive in late September or early October. Sheikh Tariq's wedding to Lady Noor bint Khaled al-Mansouri, arranged since childhood, delayed twice for diplomatic reasons, was scheduled for the last week of September. Layla made her decision within 48 hours. She would not tell him. Not yet. Not ever, if possible. She understood the consequences in this world. DNA tests demanded by family elders, custody laws favoring paternal lineage, the erasure of her own name from any official record. She had seen how expatriate women vanished from contracts, how stories were rewritten. She chose silence. For the next 7 months, she hid the pregnancy with discipline bordering on art. Loose abayas in dark silk replaced her fitted work attire. She requested flexible hours, citing archival sensitivity to light. She ate small meals in her apartment rather than the staff canteen. Morning sickness she managed alone, pressing cold cloths to her forehead until it passed. When her abdomen began to round, she wore structured outer layers and positioned herself behind desks or bookshelves during rare meetings. Sheikh Tariq noticed her withdrawal but attributed it to professional focus, or perhaps to the approaching wedding that neither mentioned. Preparations for the union consumed the estate. Lady Norah arrived in March, a poised woman of 31, educated in Geneva and London, fluent in 4 languages, active in women's education charities. She and Tariq met formally in the Majlis. Their interactions were courteous, practiced. Layla watched from the edges, cataloging wedding gifts for the archive, labeling envelopes of congratulations from foreign dignitaries. She felt no jealousy, only clarity. This was never going to be her story. By August the child moved. A flutter at first, then insistent kicks during quiet afternoons among the manuscripts. Layla spoke to the baby in Arabic and occasional Greek phrases her mother once used, private, protective words. She named the child in her mind. Zayn for a boy, Zara for a girl. She prepared nothing visible. No crib, no clothes. Instead she saved money, researched flights, contacted a trusted cousin in Cairo who could arrange temporary housing. Escape required paperwork. A new passport application processed quietly through a lawyer in Dara. Medical records transferred under a different name. Every step calculated. On September 25th, 4 days before the wedding, Layla went into early labor. Contractions began at dawn, irregular but strengthening. She waited until the household staff shifted to wedding duties, then slipped into a service corridor. A maintenance driver named Faisal, a Pakistani man who had once helped her carry heavy crates and never asked questions, found her leaning against a wall, breathing carefully. He drove her to a private maternity clinic in Al-Quaz, paid for with her savings. No records linked to the Al-Sef name. At 3:17 a.m. on September 26th, a boy was born. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Dark hair, eyes still cloudy. Zayn. Layla held him for only an hour before the clinic discharged her. She returned to the compound at dusk, baby wrapped in a plain blanket beneath her abaya. Faisal waited at the service gate, engine idling. She carried Zayn to her apartment and placed him in a drawer lined with soft towels, the closest thing to a cradle she could manage. She fed him formula warmed in a kettle, rocked him until he slept. Outside, fireworks tested patterns above the gardens. The wedding was in 48 hours. She planned to leave the following night, after the ceremony began and security focused outward. A car would wait beyond the perimeter wall. A flight to Cairo at 4:10 a.m. But fate, or perhaps simple human exhaustion, intervened. On the evening of September 28th, the wedding unfolded as scripted. Thousands of white roses shipped from Ecuador. A banquet hall transformed into a canopy of gold-threaded silk. Lady Norah in ivory and diamonds. Sheikh Tariq in traditional bisht edged with threads of real gold. Cameras discreet, guests vetted. Layla remained in her apartment, feeding Zayn, listening to distant music drift through the vents. At 11:40 p.m., as the couple retired to the private wing, a senior aide knocked on Layla's door. Sheikh Tariq wished to see her in the library. A final question about a manuscript before the honeymoon. Layla hesitated. Zayn slept in the drawer. She covered him with a light shawl, locked the apartment and followed the aide. The library was dim, lit only by reading lamps. Tariq stood near the long table, still in his wedding robes, the ceremonial dagger at his waist catching the light. He turned when she entered. "You've been distant," he said quietly. She nodded. "Work has been consuming." He studied her. "And yet you're thinner in the face, heavier in the body." "I am not blind, Layla." Silence stretched. She felt the pulse in her throat. He stepped closer. "Show me." She did not move. "Layla." She lifted the abaya enough to reveal the gentle curve that remained, the body still recovering. His expression did not change. No anger, no surprise, only a deep stillness. "How long?" he asked. "Born 2 days ago. A boy." Tariq closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were wet. Not with rage, but something closer to grief. "Why hide it?" "Because this world does not allow both of us to keep him," she said. "Your family would demand tests, custody. My name would disappear from the story. I would become the foreign woman who carried an heir, then vanished. I chose to vanish on my terms." He walked to the window, looking out at the lanterns floating across the lawn. "And now, I leave tonight. Car waits. A flight at 4. He turned back. "You think I would let them take him from you? I think your world would require it." Honor, lini, elaiensis. I am not part of that equation. Tariq exhaled slowly. Noor knows nothing of this. The marriage is political, not passionate. But a child changes everything. Layla said nothing. He crossed the room and stood before her. Let me see him. She led him back through the corridors, past closed doors where laughter still echoed from the reception. In her apartment, Zayn stirred at the sound of footsteps. Tariq knelt beside the drawer, lifted the shawl. The baby opened his eyes, dark, curious. Tariq touched one small hand. He has your mouth, he whispered. Layla watched him, waiting for the command that would end her plan. Instead, Tariq stood. Take him. Go. She blinked. I will not stop you, he said. But I will not pretend this never happened. I will send money quietly through channels that cannot be traced to either of us. Enough for education, safety, a home. In return, you never speak of this. Not to journalists, not on social media, not to anyone. His existence remains between us. Layla searched his face. And if I refuse? Then the family lawyers will find you within days. You know how thorough they are. She nodded once. Tariq looked at Zayn again, then at her. Name him something strong, and tell him, one day when he is old enough, that his father wanted him to be free. He left without another word. The door closed softly. At 2:50 a.m., Layla carried Zayn through the service exit. Faisal waited in the same unmarked sedan. They drove past the gates as distant fireworks painted the sky in celebration of a union that would be photographed and praised across continents. The flight departed on time. Layla held Zayn against her chest as the plane climbed over the Gulf. Below, Dubai shrank to a constellation of lights. Beautiful, indifferent, eternal. Years later, in a quiet apartment overlooking the Nile in Cairo, Zayn would ask about his father. Layla would tell him only fragments. A man who loved books, who spoke softly, who chose mercy over possession on the night the city celebrated his marriage to another woman. And somewhere in Dubai, in a private library that still smelled of aged paper, Sheikh Tariq would occasionally open a small envelope containing a single photograph. A boy with dark hair and curious eyes, laughing on a sunlit balcony. He kept it inside a rare volume of Al-Mutanabbi, between pages that spoke of love that endures in silence. No scandal ever broke. No headlines. No investigations. Only two people who carried the same secret across borders and years, each preserving the other's freedom in the only way their world allowed. The wedding night ended with fireworks and vows. But the real story, the one that mattered, ended in a quiet library, with a promise kept and a child carried into the night.